Seems like I missed a juicy conversation. Am I good to begin? Okay. بسم الله الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن خير الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا وزدنا علما اللهم أرنا حقيقة الأشياء كما هي اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه آمين يا رب العالمين السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. The second half of Surah Al-Baqarah, we find the theme alternating. With respect to the first half, we saw the theme addressing the Bani Israel pretty continuous, pretty linear almost. However, here we see a conversation with respect to qital fi sabilillah, for example, and then all of a sudden it changes to a discussion on talaq, on the matters pertaining to divorce. So one way of understanding, and this you would see this manner of arrangement of ayat in Surah Nisa, in Surah Ma'idah as well, that this is how community life really is being depicted in the narrative of the Quran. It is never linear. We're never going to be living life first this, then that. It's all going on simultaneously. There is so much that is going on simultaneously. You have your community life, you have your family life, all of that is being given priority, all of that is being given the due attention that it deserves. And so one of the ways that this was explained is that you look at the strands of a rope and how those strands, when they come together, they're wound into a rope. But you can pick out each strand separately as well. So of the strands that we see in the second half of Surah Al-Baqarah, there is a very important strand that pertains to the social life. And here you would find the topic of divorce being brought up, right? There is a very important strand that pertains to economic life that we're going to talk more about today. It has been introduced in the context of infaq fi sabilillah, spending in the way of Allah, but then there's other dimensions to economic life that are going to be highlighted in Surah Al-Baqarah. There is a very important strand with respect to acts of worship. So we see Salah obviously being mentioned, we see Sawm being mentioned, we see Hajj being mentioned as well, right? And then within that is this continuous running theme of struggling in the path of Allah, of that infaq and that jihad and the qital, all of that being brought together as one strand as well. So continuing from where we left off yesterday, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, and as I am going through most of these ayat, I'm only going to translate. We are not going to get into the fiqh of them at all, primarily because I don't know any of that. And so we're going to restrict our conversation strictly to the translation, and then whatever pertains in terms of points of reflection or wisdom we may get into. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وإذا طلقتم النساء, and when you have divorced women فبلغن أجلهن, and they reach the end of their waiting period فلا تعذلوهن أن ينكحن أزواجهن, then do not prevent them from marrying their husbands, whatever prospective husbands they have later. إذا تراضوا بينهم بالمعروف, if they mutually agreed in a normal way. ذلك يوعظ به, that this is instructed to من كان منكم يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر, whoever of you really believes in Allah and the last day. ذلكم أزكى لكم وأطهر, this will be more pure for you and clean you, and it will be a source of cleaning you up as well and purifying you better. Wallahu ya'lamu wa antum la ta'lamun. And Allah knows and you do not know. 232, my apologies. This is ayah number 232. 232. So again, in a situation of divorce, when that does take place, the possessiveness does not cease. And so in that possessiveness, to try to obstruct, and people in a position of social authority would be looking to wield that force more and prevent their former spouse from getting married, specifically their former wives from getting married to somebody else. And this can be done in multiple ways, by economically, by socially, just by spreading rumors or just slandering or coming up with these conversations. Oh, you're getting to that person now. Maybe you were always, in an affair. With all of this loose talk that is not appreciated whatsoever, which is all in the direction of preventing that person from moving on and continuing their life with their prospective husbands. وَالْوَالِدَاتُ يُرْضِعْنَ أَوْلَادَهُنَّ. And the mothers will breastfeed their offspring حَوْلَيْنِ كَامِلَيْنِ, for 2 complete years. لِمَنْ أَرَادَ أَنْ يُتِمَّ الرَّضَاعَ. And for whoever wishes to complete the nursing period. وَعَلَى الْمَوْلُودِ لَهُ رِزْقُهُنَّ وَكِسْوَتُهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. The father is responsible for the mother's provisions and clothing according to acceptable norms. لَا تُكَلَّفُ نَفْسٌ إِلَّا وُسْعَهَا. No individual is burdened more than their capacity. لَا تُضَارَّ وَالِدَةٌ بِوَلَدِهَا. Neither a mother should be made to suffer because of her child, that she is feeding the child, taking care of the child, and then there is no recompensation whatsoever. وَلَا مَوْلُودٌ لَهُ بِوَلَدِهِ. Nor should the father to whom the child belongs should be made to suffer because of his child, to be made to pay extravagantly more than they can afford, more than is within their means. وَعَلَى الْوَارِثِ مِثْلُ ذَلِكَ. And the father's heirs are under the same obligation. فَإِنْ أَرَادَ فِصَالًا أَنْ تَرَاضٍ مِنْهُمَا وَتَشَاوُرٍ. But if both by mutual consent and after due consultation desire weaning, فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْهِمَا. Then there is no blame upon them. وَإِنْ أَرَدْتُمْ أَن تَسْتَرْضِعُوا أَوْلَادَكُمْ. But if you decide to have a foster mother for your children, فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْكُمْ. Even then there is no blame upon you. إِذَا سَلَّمْتُمْ مَا آتَيْتُمْ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. Provided you pay in accordance with the norms. وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهِ. And observe the taqwa of Allah. وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ بَصِيرٌ. And know that Allah is watching all of what you do. All of these commandments in their own place. If taqwa is missing, if this realization that Allah is watching is missing, then you can very easily play with the letter of the law. If you do not regard the spiritual dimension of it, the esoteric dimension of it, which is essentially taqwa. وَالَّذِينَ يُتَوَفَّوْنَ مِنْكُمْ. And those of you who pass away, وَيَذَرُونَ أَزْوَاجًا. And leave widows, يَتَرَبَّصْنَ بِأَنفُسِهِنَّ أَرْبَعَةَ أَشْهُرٍ وَعَشْرًا. These women should wait 4 months and 10 days. فَإِذَا بَلَغْنَ أَجَلَهُنَّ. But when they reach the end of their waiting period, فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْكُمْ فِي مَا فَعَلْنَا فِي أَنفُسِهِنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. There is no blame on you in what they do for themselves in a decent manner, i.e. how the society is set up, that what it allows and what it does not allow. If they go ahead after this time period with respect to how they want to pursue their marriage after that, this is completely up to them. Wallahu bima ta'maluna khabir. And Allah is all aware of what you do. Wala junaha alaykum. And there is no blame upon you. Fima aradtum bihi min khitabatin nisa. If you hint at these women a proposal of marriage, أو أكننتم في أنفسكم, or you keep it to yourself, علم الله أنكم ستذكرونهن. Allah knows that you will certainly mention to them, ولكن لا تواعدوهن سرا. But be careful not to make any secret agreement with them, إلا أن تقولوا قولا معروف, except that you utter some acceptable word. ولا تعزموا عقدة النكاح. But do not firmly resolve the marriage contract, حتى يبلغ الكتاب أجله, until the prescribed waiting period comes to an end. وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ يَعْلَمُ مَا فِي أَنفُسِكُمْ. And keep in mind that Allah knows whatever is within you. فَاحْذَرُوهُ. Beware of Him. وَاعْلَمُوا. And know أَنَّ اللَّهَ غَفُورٌ حَلِيمٌ. That Allah is forgiving and forbearing. لَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْكُمْ إِن طَلَّقْتُمُ النِّسَاءَ مَا لَمْ تَمَسُّوهُنَّ. There is no blame upon you if you divorce women even before having touched them. أَوْ تَفْرِضُوا لَهُنَّ فَرِيضًا. Or you have fixed the dowry for them. وَمَتِّعُوهُنَّ. Pay them something anyway. عَلَى الْمُوسِعِ قَدَرُهُ. The wealthy according to his means. وعلى المقتر أو على المقتر قدره, and the poor according to his means, متاعا بالمعروف حقا على المحسنين, as a fair provision, a duty upon the people of ihsan, the people of excellence. وإن طلقتموهن من قبل أن تمسوهن, and if you divorce them before having touched them, before having consummated the marriage, وقد فرضتم لهن فريضة, while you have a fixed dowry for them, فنصف ما فرضتم, then give them half of what you fixed, إلا أن يعفون, unless they forego it, أو يعفو الذي بيده عقدة النكاح, or in whose hand is the marriage tie, agrees to forego his half and makes the full payment. وَأَن تَعْفُوا أَقْرَبُ لِلتَّقْوَى, if you forego, the men are being addressed, it will be closer to taqwa. وَلَا تَنْسَوُا الْفَضْلَ بَيْنَكُمْ, do not forget graciousness between yourselves. Everything should not be about legally binding. This is due and this is not due. There is the idea of fadl. How about letting go? At least somebody needs to take that initiative. One of the important social parameters, our society as it has developed, Muslim community too, unfortunately, the dowry that the man has to pay, the woman, the importance that that's given, whether it's an amount of money or whatever it may be, it has reduced in significance to the point of being a formality and nothing more. And what this does to the entire marital relationship is it has devastating consequences. For the simple idea that a woman is committing herself to a man uncertain about her future, leaving behind so much of her comfort zone, so much of her space that she was used to, coming into another person's house, committing to live there, and knowing that marital prospects after being married go down significantly. And it becomes more and more difficult for the woman as she ages anyway. So to make this commitment, to trust the other person literally with her entire self and her future, and not have any security. There's so many psychological and social insecurities as they are. To add to that a financial insecurity is only making the situation worse. So what this dowry does, this commitment that is made at the time of nikah, it gives some level, not entirely, but at least some level of security, some level of reassurance that all is not lost, that someone should not remain in a relationship that they simply are being persecuted in for a financial dependence utterly. They're, in a sense, financial hostages, right? So there needs to be that clarity, there needs to be that reassurance that this entire phenomena of the man giving what the woman demands has to be taken seriously all over again, for that priority, that significance is now lost. We implore spirituality, trust, all these vague ideas, and the concrete commitment the Quran wants us to ensure is completely gone in the background. It's become a formality. Thank you. Yeah. So that's an incredibly important and pertinent issue for Muslims living in the West, with what the Quran says, what fiqh says, and then what the law says, right? And how that's to be navigated. Completely beyond my scope. Completely beyond my scope, especially to even begin an educated conversation on that right now. That is something that the community elders, community leaders, community thinkers, experts need to sit down and educate ourselves about. That is something. Hmm. I would not know. I would not. If there is, I am not the person to ask. Hmm. Yeah. But that is important, nevertheless. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yes. So the entire idea, what we get from these passages, is the significance that Allah gives to this subject. And if as a community we don't give this thing enough importance, it is not given significance, we're not educating ourselves and resolving these issues for our community, then we're not living up to the mandate of the Quran really. And that's a communal responsibility. Please. Hmm. The idea is that it's something that the woman decides. The prerogative is entirely on the woman getting married. Yes, exactly. So the idea is that it should be something that if the woman, see, the nature of the sexual relationship, and particularly the nature of men, demanding novelty, thinking that they need novelty at all times, and losing interest after the initial time period of the marriage. The marriage really starts after the honeymoon period. So the sense of security is for that time period. Before somebody thinks that now they've had their fun, to put it very bluntly and crudely, and they can move on to see, what other fish in the sea there are, that this becomes that sort of a process, they have to think twice. And for that reason, it is left entirely at the behest of the woman getting married, that whatever she deems is enough to reassure her, so that the man does think twice, that it is considered to be, okay, I can't play around like this. This is not a game. This is a significant commitment that is being made. Please. So we know, I do not see these particular ayat talking about who decides, but we know from the Sunnah that it is the woman who has that right. So from an instance in the time of Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, where he tried to set a level where some of the Sahaba were complaining that women are asking too much. And so he was putting an upper limit to it. One of the women complained to him in the masjid, stood up and said, how could you set a limit upon which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam never set a limit? And so he recanted and he said, you're right, I can't do that. And so there won't be a limit. So it is up to the woman, however much they want to set up. Please. So those are particular situations that are spoken of if the marriage is not consummated. If before the marriage is consummated, if the divorce takes place, then that's where half of the amount is being spoken of. Okay? All right, I'm gonna. Where was I? Which ayah was I on? 238. Thank you. Okay. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. حافظوا على الصلوات. Guard the prayers. والصلاة الوسطى, especially the middle one. Two opinions as to what Salatul Wusta is. One particular opinion says that this is Salatul Asr, that the Asr prayer is being spoken of specifically. Another opinion says that this is a manner in which you pray, i.e. a prayer which is balanced, a prayer which is appropriate is being spoken of. وَقُومُوا لِلَّهِ قَانِتِينَ, and stand up before Allah with true obedience. وَإِن خِفْتُمْ فَرِجَالًا أَوْ رُكْبَانًا, but if you are in danger, pray while walking or riding. فَإِذَا أَمِنْتُمْ But when you are safe, فَاذْكُرُوا اللَّهَ كَمَا عَلَّمَكُمْ Remember Allah the way He has taught you, i.e. offer prayers the way you usually would. مَا لَمْ تَكُونُوا تَعْلَمُونَ Which you could not have otherwise known. وَالَّذِينَ يُتَوَفَّوْنَ مِنْكُمْ وَيَذَرُونَ أَزْوَاجًا وَصِيَّةً لِأَزْوَاجِهِمْ And those of you who die and leave widows should leave a will in favor of their wives. مَتَاعًا إِلَى الْحَوْلِ غَيْرَ إِخْرَاجٍ A provision for 1 year without turning them out. فَإِنْ خَرَجْنَا But if they leave on their own, فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْكُمْ Then there is no blame upon you. فِيمَا فَعَلْنَا فِي أَنفُسِهِنَّ مِنْ مَعْرُوفٍ For what they choose for themselves in an acceptable manner. وَاللَّهُ عَزِيزٌ حَكِيمٌ And Allah is mighty and wise. وَلِلْمُطَلَّقَاتِ مَتَاعٌ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ And as for divorced women, there is a provision according to what is acceptable, حَقًّا عَلَى الْمُتَّقِينَ As an obligation on the people of taqwa. كَذَلِكَ يُبَيِّنُ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ آيَاتِهِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَعْقِلُونَ That is how Allah makes His ayat clear to you so that you may use your aql, you may use your reason. Again, there is so much that is given, but that's so much that has to be thought out given whatever has been laid out for you. So moving right along to now an incident from the time of Bani Israel that is going to be mentioned, but this time it's mentioned in a very different tone than how it was mentioned in the first half of the surah. This is more of a don't be like them. That too had that sense of don't be like them, but they were being directly addressed. Here we're being given a different idea. So why were the Bani Israel replaced to begin with? We've spoken about that. They replaced belief with wishful beliefs. The importance of community, that responsibility was completely forgotten. It was replaced by a cultish exploitation rather than empowering people from within the community. And so many things, the rituals that were supposed to be meaningfully connecting people to Allah became meaningless movements. And so scripture too was forgotten, and the segment of their scholars which used scripture to justify all of what was going on, a mockery of religion that had been made. So after Yusha alayhi salam conquered Jerusalem, this is a generation after Musa alayhi salam passed away, he established 12 tribes. Those 12 tribes continued to fight with each other. Eventually they were invaded by a foreign power, and they didn't have the hold that they used to when Yusha alayhi salam had established them. At this time, they're not in power, they're still weak, and a prophet is sent who revives them, brings them all together, and now they're showing some vigor to fight. This is where the story of Talut, Dawood, Sulaiman alayhim as-salam is brought in. Alam tara ila alladhina kharaju min diyarihim wa hum ulufun. Haven't you considered those who left their homes in thousands? Hadar al-maut, out of fear of death. فَقَالَ لَهُمُ اللَّهُ مُوتُوا So Allah said to them, die. So they were put to death. Now this has been interpreted in two ways as well, that this was physical death that actually took place, they were all killed and then revived. Or this is talking about the state of the ummah as a whole, that they had spiritually practically died, that they had completely lost touch with the scripture. ثُمَّ أَحْيَاهُمْ Then He brought them back to life again. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَذُو فَضْلٍ عَلَى النَّاسِ For sure, Allah is bountiful to people. وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَشْكُرُونَ But most people are not grateful. وَقَاتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ And fight in the cause of Allah. وَاعْلَمُوا And remember, أَنَّ اللَّهَ سَمِيعٌ عَلِيمٌ That Allah is hearing and knowing. So the Badr for the Muslim community is coming up as these ayat are being revealed. It will come up in some time. So they're being mentally prepared for it. Whatever was the equivalent of Badr for the people of Bani Israel we're being reminded of that alongside. مَنْ ذَا الَّذِي يُقْرِضُ اللَّهَ قَرْضًا حَسَنًا Who is the one who will give Allah a beautiful loan? فَيُضَاعِفَهُ لَهُ أَضْعَافًا كَثِيرًا So that Allah increases it many folds. Again, infaq fi sabilillah, spending in the way of Allah, can be in the form of charity to the people who deserve it. Of course, the underprivileged. That list has been given. But in addition to that, there is infaq fi sabilillah, in the way of Allah, i.e. in the way of Allah's deen. For the deen, for its propagation, for its establishment, there is a definitive need, a category in which and that's what's called qard hasana, that a goodly loan that is loaned to Allah, Allah will return that increasing it manyfold. Wallahu yaqbidu wa yabsut, and it is Allah who decreases and increases. Wa ilayhi turja'un, and your ultimate return is to Him alone. Alam tara ila al-mala'i min bani Isra'ila min ba'di Musa, haven't you considered about the leaders of Bani Israel after Musa? إذ قالوا لنبي لهم أبعث لنا ملكا, when they said to one of their prophets, send for us a king. We need a leader. We have a leader. نقاتل في سبيل الله. We will fight in the cause of Allah. قال هل عسيتم إن كتب عليكم القتال ولا تقاتلوا. The Prophet replied, is it possible that you refuse to fight if you are asked to do so? Right now you're saying, if that condition is fulfilled, then we will fight. Fair enough. What if that position is fulfilled? Is there a possibility that you will not fight? It is very easy to say that if that happens, then I'll do this. Oh, in that situation, I'll be the best Muslim possible. Oh, when the Mahdi comes, I will be at the forefront. What about now? You can't even get up for Fajr, and you're all big talk. So it's very easy to make these tall claims, but when the rubber actually hits the road, where are you going to be? And for you to be on the right side when the rubber does hit the road, what you do on a daily basis right now matters. What you're doing with your salawat, your adhkar, your whatever, what's going on there in your routine interactions with each other. Where are you there? If there is so much that's lacking there, how do you think when the huge tribulation comes, when a bigger trial comes, you're going to prove equal to it? That's living in a world of fantasy. It has to be in these relatively easy time periods that you prepare for that matter. You cannot say that I'll be in that championship or whatever in that wrestling match, and that day I'll be a good fighter, but right now I'm not training. Doesn't make sense. Nobody in their right mind would say that. That's how spirituality works as well. You think you'll be up to spiritual tasks when those tasks are heavier, when you can't get the smaller ones done? وَقَالُوا وَمَا لَنَا أَلَّا نُقَاتِلْ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. They responded, why would we not fight in the way of Allah? وَقَدْ أُخْرِجْنَا مِنْ دِيَارِنَا وَأَبْنَائِنَا. While we have been driven away from our homes and children, we've been made captives. فَلَمَّا كُتِبَ عَلَيْهِمُ الْقِتَالِ. But when they were commanded to fight, تَوَلَّوْا إِلَّا قَلِيلًا مِنْهُمْ. They turned away except for a very few of them. Wallahu alimun bil-zalimin, and Allah knows such wrongdoers. وَقَالَ لَهُمْ نَبِيُّهُمْ, and their Prophet said to them, إِنَّ اللَّهَ قَدْ بَعَثَ لَكُمْ طَالُوتَ مَلِكًا. Allah has appointed Talut as your king. قَالُوا أَنَّا يَكُونُ لَهُ الْمُلْكُ عَلَيْنَا. They said, how can he be a ruler over us? وَنَحْنُ أَحَقُّ بِالْمُلْكِ مِنْهُ. We are more worthy of kingship than him. So again, this بَغْيًا بَيْنَهُمْ. Their initial claim was, we want leadership. We want to be united under that leadership. What was an asterisk, a footnote, was make us that leader. Or that leader should be me. Yes, the community needs leadership. Hidden in brackets is, I need to be that leader that the community needs. And that's where the problems never get resolved. What is being asked of them here is, okay, Talut is your leader, go. Why Talut? Why him? What was presented before was a concern for the community. A selfless concern, supposedly. But the solution was entirely selfish. And that's where the reality comes out. And so the idea being that so many of us would find that in our efforts for the deen of Allah, they end up being, the deen of Allah is being served, but if it's being served by somebody else, do I look to sabotage it? By another institution, another movement, another masjid? Is that a problem for me? Am I going about the deen of Allah and the work of the deen of Allah and the work of the ummah from a very cutthroat corporate business perspective? That I'm not gonna let them succeed, and when they fail, I can gloat, I can laugh at them. Ha, they were never gonna do well. They're looking to achieve the same thing you're looking to achieve. Where is this coming from? What this is revealing about us. How initially a sound intention gets corrupted and becomes a selfish motive for a project for vested interest. And then we don't need any outside community. We don't need any Jewish conspiracy to bring us down. We are self-sufficient in digging our own graves. وَلَمْ يُؤْتَ سَعَةً مِّنَ الْمَالِ He does not even have a lot of wealth. قَالَ إِنَّ اللَّهَ اصْطَفَاهُ عَلَيْكُمْ The Prophet said, Allah has chosen him over you. وَزَادَهُ بَسْطَةً فِي الْعِلْمِ وَالْجِسْمِ And He has blessed him with more knowledge and stature. That's what matters for leadership. And that he has, not your standards. وَاللَّهُ يُؤْتِي مُلْكَهُ مَنْ يَشَاءُ And Allah gives power to whoever He wills. وَاللَّهُ وَاسِعٌ عَلِيمٌ And Allah is all-embracing, knowing. وَقَالَ لَهُمْ نَبِيُّهُمْ And their Prophet told them, إِنَّ آيَةَ مُلْكِهِ The sign of His kingship is أَنْ يَأْتِيكُمُ الطَّابُوتُ That there will come to you the chest فِيهِ سَكِينَةٌ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ Which contains a source of contentment from your Rabb وَبَقِيَّةٌ مِّمَّا تَرَكَ آلُ مُوسَى وَآلُ هَارُونَ And it contains the remains of the family of Musa and family of Harun that they had left behind. So something of the heirlooms of Musa alayhi salam, possibly his staff, and that of Harun alayhi salam, that had gotten lost over the couple of generations that have passed. So one of the things that Talut would do is bring that, or the sign of him being chosen the king is that coming back. تَحْمِلُهُ الْمَلَائِكَةِ It would be carried by the angels. إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَةً لَكُمْ And that is a sign for you. إِن كُنْتُم مُؤْمِنِينَ If you really are believers. فَلَمَّا فَصَلَ طَالُوتُ بِالْجُنُودِ And when Talut marched forth with his army, قَالَ إِنَّ اللَّهَ مُبْتَلِيكُمْ بِنَهَرٍ Allah is going to test you at a river. فَمَنْ شَرِبَ مِنْهُ Whoever drinks from it, فَلَيْسَ مِنِّي Will have nothing to do with me. So they're incredibly thirsty. They've journeyed a journey. But you cannot lead something like this without trials, without a level of discipline that comes through such trials. Not anyone who jumps the bandwagon and is on the side of the victors, if they haven't been tried, if tamhis has not taken place, Allah filters. It's a filtration process that the community has to go through. If the filtration process does not take place, if the hypocrites and the true believers are not separated, and victory is given, then what results from that victory, as we read earlier, we spoke about yesterday as well, is exploitation, is corruption in the name of religion. And so this discipline, this trial, this difficulty that they would go through, this selflessness that has to be proven, is what is being manifested here, what the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum repeatedly showed. First in Badr, then in Uhud, then in Ahzab, and then even between that this test that they were subjected to before they became those selfless leaders of the world. Now, if Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman and Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhum are leading the affairs of the believers and they have so much at their disposal, it's not their private property and they're not going to treat it as such. They're going to do what is best for the ummah, for sure, without a doubt. So whoever drinks from it will have nothing to do with me. وَمَنْ لَمْ يَطْعَمْهُ But those who do drink from it, those who don't drink from it, فَإِنَّهُ مِنِّي They are definitely with me. The big talkers, those who really wanted a king and a leader that they would fight under, they're going to be separated from those who genuinely believe. إِلَّا مَنِ اغْتَرَفَ غُرْفَةً بِيَدِهِ Or one who just takes a sip will not be excluded. That's fine. That's excusable. One sip, one full hand is fine. فَشَرِبُوا مِنْهُ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا مِنْهُمْ They all took a drink from it, except a few of them. So most of them are filtered out. فَلَمَّا جَاوَزَهُ هُوَ وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مَعَهُ So when Talut and his believing companions crossed the river, قَالُوا لَا طَاقَةَ لَنَا الْيَوْمَ بِجَالُوتَ وَجُنُودِهِ They said, we don't have any power to fight against Jalut and his forces today. Now this is the group that has passed the test. But because passing the test meant so many have been filtered out, they're a small band of people. And they're not really sure of themselves. قَالَ الَّذِينَ يَظُنُّونَ أَنَّهُمْ مُلَاقُو رَبِّهِمْ Those from among them who believed believed in their meeting with Allah, they were sure about meeting Allah. They said, كَم مِّن فِئَةٍ قَلِيلَةٍ غَلَبَتْ فِئَةً كَثِيرَةً بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ How many a small group of people has overcome a large group of people with the permission of Allah. وَاللَّهُ مَعَ الصَّابِرِينَ And Allah is with the people of Sabr. This is how this resonates with the Battle of Badr. That the believing community, that's how central Quran was to preparing them. And how important it was for revelation to be given in accordance with the situation. The believers are going to be in Badr pretty soon. And this ayah These ayat, this narrative is necessary for them to stand steadfast in the face of a much larger army, much better resourced army. Wallahu ma'as sabirin, and Allah is with the people of sabr. وَلَمَّا بَرَزُوا لِجَالُوتَ وَجُنُودِهِ, and when they advanced to face Jalut, Jalut is the biblical Goliath, and his forces, قالوا, they said, رَبَّنَا أَفْرِغْ عَلَيْنَا صَبْرًا, our Rabb, pour onto us perseverance. Make us stand strong and continue going. وَثَبِّتْ أَقْدَامَنَا, and make our feet firm. وَانْصُرْنَا عَلَى الْقَوْمِ الْكَافِرِينَ, and help us against the disbelievers. فَهَزَمُوهُمْ بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ, so they defeated them with the permission of Allah. وَقَتَلَ دَاوُودُ جَالُوتَ, and David killed Goliath. Dawood alayhi salam, with his slingshot, he took Goliath, Jalut, down. وَآتَاهُ اللَّهُ الْمُلْكَ وَالْحِكْمَةِ, and Allah granted him kingdom and wisdom. وَعَلَّمَهُ مِمَّا يَشَاءُ, and also taught him from whatever he willed. وَلَوْلَا دَفْعُ اللَّهِ النَّاسَ بَعْضَهُمْ بِبَعْضٍ, and had Allah not checked some people by means of others, لَفَسَدَتِ الْأَرْضِ, there would have been corruption, chaos on earth. وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ ذُو فَضْلٍ عَلَى الْعَالَمِينَ, but Allah is gracious to all the people. These hierarchies, these structures, these governments, all of these, why do they become necessary? Because had they not been there, there would have been constant conflict, continuous chaos. تِلْكَ آيَاتُ اللَّهِ نَتْلُوهَا عَلَيْكَ بِالْحَقِّ, these are signs of Allah which we recite to you with truth. وَإِنَّكَ لَمِنَ الْمُرْسَلِينَ, and you, Ya Rasulullah, are certainly one of the messengers. تِلْكَ الرُّسُلُ فَضَّلْنَا بَعْضَهُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ, these are messengers, we've exalted some of them over others. Each prophet had unique functions, unique abilities, different contexts, and they brought a different exhibition of the beauty of that institution of prophethood out. How Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows us so many different role models to follow in their footsteps. Minhum man kallam Allah, there is one from among them whom Allah spoke to. وَرَفَعَ بَعْضَهُمْ دَرَجَاتٍ, and He raised some of them in ranks. وَآتَيْنَا عِيسَى بْنَ مَرْيَمَ الْبَيِّنَاتِ, and we gave clear signs to Isa, the son of Maryam. وَأَيَّدْنَاهُ بِرُوحِ الْقُدُسِ, and we aided him with the Holy Spirit. وَلَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ مَقْتَتَلَ الَّذِينَ مِن بَعْدِهِمْ, had Allah willed, people after him would not have fought with each other. مِن بَعْدِ مَا جَاءَتْهُمُ الْبَيِّنَاتِ, after having received clear signs. وَلَكِنِ اخْتَلَفُوا, but they did differ. فَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ آمَنَ, so some of them came to believe. وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ كَفَرَ, that's the difference, the distinction that ended up happening between the Jews and the Christians. وَلَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ مَقْتَتَلُوا, had Allah wanted, they would not have fought against each other, they would not have been divided. وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ يَفْعَلُ مَا يُرِيدُ, but Allah does what He wants. There is wisdom in this that Allah knows of. Who are we to say? Oh, had they all believed in Isa alayhi salam, this division would not have happened. Oh, if we can say, we can go on and on and on and on. But Allah has His wisdom as to what this was necessary for, something that we are now beginning to see more of, as to how this was necessary for the tamhis, for the purification of our generation, of the ummah now. That those divisions that occurred at that time, what role are they playing in the global situation now? And how are we responding to whatever is going on? Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu anfiqu mimma razaqnakum, you who have believed, spend from what we have provided you with. Min qabli an ya'tiya yawmun, before there comes a day, la bay'un fihi, where there will be no exchange, wala khullatun wala shafa'a, neither would there be any friendship nor any intercession. Again, the same theme that was warned, that the Bani Israel were reminded of, the warnings that they were given. Everyone, your own investments are what is going to save you on the Day of Judgment. Your infaq fi sabilillah is what is going to prevent your hypocrisy from developing. Wal kafiruna humud zalimun, and it is the disbelievers who are unjust. And in the midst of all of this battle, divorce is going on, that talk is happening, that rectification is being done, spending in the way of Allah. But why spend? Why is this fighting and jihad and all of that necessary to begin with? Allahu la ilaha illa. Because Allah, there is no ilah except Him. Ilah having three implications at least. One implication of ilah is the one worthy of love. the utmost love that the deity or the being to whom that is given is ilah. The second implication is of trust. The one upon whom tawakkul, the one who is worthy of being trusted. Again, attributes of power and attributes of izzah, authority, are implied in that trust. The third is the one who is ultimately the source of the one from whom you draw your purpose, your meaningful. He is that ultimate source. That these attributes of Allah's truth, justice, that they come in, and that's how to understand Him to be ilah is in all of these different dimensions. The one we love, the one we obey, the one we trust, the one who commands every dimension of our life. All of the attributes of Allah. And they belong only to Allah in their highest sense. That's the one we commit ourselves to. Recognizing that if we put others in His place, love others more, obey others more, trust others more, attribute power to others, have some form of meaningfulness excluding Allah, it is not going to work. We're going to fall flat on our face. We're going to be shattered. And we're going to have a difficult time putting the pieces back together. So to know where it's all coming from, who it goes back to, is essential. And so the Sayyidah of the ayat of the Quran, the leader of the ayat of the Quran, this ayah, Ayatul Kursi, that delineates so beautifully these attributes of Allah. Another implication of ilah is the one who baffles the intellect, the one who goes beyond being encompassed or defined. What does it mean to define? To define means to draw lines around, to draw boundaries around. And essentially that can't be God. Whatever is defined and delineated, is encompassed, is completely understood. So to understand ilah is the one who transcends it. Allahu la ilaha illa. Allah, there is no one worthy of love, worthy of obedience, worthy of that level of mysteriousness that we attribute to Him other than Him. Al-Hayyul Qayyum, the ever-living, the sustainer. That when you're talking to Allah, you know He's listening. When you're acting for Allah, you know He's watching. He's not distant. He's not gone. He's not withdrawn. It's not that He does not know everything. And that's both a consolation as well as a warning. It's a consolation for those suffering and doing good. Allah knows. Allah is living, Al-Qayyum. Not only is He living, He is sustaining. Everything depends for its life upon Him, and Allah does not depend on anyone. Allah does not depend on anyone. لَا تَأْخُذُهُ سِنَةٌ وَلَا نَوْمٌ. Neither drowsiness overtakes Him nor sleep. Our life, our sustained life, our propped up life, our supported life, our life which is practically on ventilators, is a life which is marred by weakness, which is manifest on a daily basis. When we yawn, when we can't stay awake. So many experiences of personal weakness should return you to your reliability, dependability, or the necessity of reliance and dependence upon Allah. He is reliable, He is dependable. Are you relying on Him? Are you depending on Him? The way you need. لَهُ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ. To Him belongs, to Him alone belongs everything in the heavens and everything upon earth. مَنْ ذَا الَّذِي يَشْفَعُ عِنْدَهُ إِلَّا بِإِذْنِهِ. Who will intercede with Him? If He is asking you to spend, if you're being asked, أَنْفِقُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أَنْفِقُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ مَنْ ذَا الَّذِي يُقْرِضُ اللَّهَ قَرْضًا حَسَنًا. Who will give Allah a goodly loan, a beautiful loan? Who is asking you? لَهُ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا. the one to whom everything belongs to begin with. If you have some ideas of somebody who will intercede for you, who will bypass the one who is lahu ma fis samawati wal ard, the one to whom belongs everything in the heavens and the earth, what are you smoking? Where did you come from? How do you figure things out? Because it's mind-boggling how you come up with these conveniences for yourself, these back doors away from responsibility. They make utterly no sense. You want to bypass Allah. How do you bypass the one who knows everything? How do you step out of his authority? How do you have somebody else intercede for you who he does not approve of? So you think all the responsibilities he asks of you, you can get away with not fulfilling them if you have a good relationship with somebody else. Who is that somebody else? So whoever that is going to be, it's going to be with his idhn to begin with. So overall, there is a complete rejection of intercession. Any back doors that we look towards to escape responsibility, whatever intercession is included in the understanding of Islam are exceptions, they're not the rule. They can't be the main principle that you live your lives by. They're adornments, they're decoration. They are what the day of judgment is going to honor. On the day of judgment, Allah is going to honor certain people with. They're more emotional, they're not legal. يَشْفَعُ إِنْدَهُ إِلَّا بِإِذْنِ يَعْلَمُ مَا بَيْنَ أَيْدِيهِمْ وَمَا خَلْفَهُم. Usually the idea of intercession makes sense in matters where, the king is too busy being a king in the palace. What does he know what goes on in the streets? The mayor knows what goes on in the streets. The mayor is going to go, the governor is going to go and tell the king, I saw this man, he does great. You should give him a raise or this much money or an award or whatever. The king, by his limitation, would have to accept the intercession of the governor or whatever. But that's not Allah. Allah is not that kind of a king. You cannot project that understanding of royalty upon Allah. Allah sees everything. Allah hears everything. He is more aware than any minister, mayor, governor, or prophet can possibly know. يَعْلَمُ مَا بَيْنَ أَيْدِيهِمْ وَمَا خَلْفَهُم. He knows whatever is in front of them. There's stuff that's in front of them, they'd know a little bit about that, but even that, not all of it. But then there's stuff that's behind them, before them, that they will not be aware of. Allah knows. وَلَا يُحِيطُونَ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنْ عِلْمِهِ إِلَّا بِمَا شَاءَ. While they encompass nothing of His knowledge, except of what He wants them to know. So where are these ideas of intercession coming from? They are an insult. They are an accusation. They are blasphemy against Allah being Al-Alim. He is Al-Alim. You thinking otherwise is, what are you doing? And we don't have to say it. But if we ignore what the Quran is asking of us, the priorities the Quran is laying out for us, and we're looking for some other priorities from somewhere else, then what are we trying to do? Giving authority to someone else over the authority of Allah, over the knowledge of Allah. وَلَا يُحِيطُونَ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنْ عِلْمِهِ إِلَّا بِمَا شَاءَ وَسِعَ كُرْسِيُّهُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. His throne extends across the heavens and the earth. وَلَا يَؤُودُهُ حِفْظُهُمْ. And their preservation does not tire Him. وَهُوَ الْعَلِيُّ الْعَظِيمُ. And He is the Most High, the Most Great. He's the one who gives you, and He is the one who's asking you to give Him alone. You put His attributes in the context of Him asking for alone, and you realize the mercy and the grace of Allah in honoring the human being. Saying that you don't have to give all of what you have, what I've given you, what belongs to me to begin with, give me some of it back, and that too I'll return, multiplied. That's the relationship that He's inviting us to. وَهُوَ الْعَلِيُّ الْعَظِيمُ. He is the Most High, the Most Great. Please. Right, so infaq fi sabilillah primarily alludes to money, but it does include mimma razaqnahum yunfiqun, that whatever we have blessed them with is more than just wealth. It's talents, it's skills, it's abilities, it's time, it is health. So bi anfusihim. So when Allah talks about the way that jihad is done bi amwalihim wa anfusihim, that your anfus are also engaged in it. So for sure, it's so much more than just money. So it is the dominion of Allah. It is to depict the power and the expansiveness of the power of Allah. So what specifically or concretely it refers to, there will be differences of opinion, but the implication in all of those differences is this is the power of Allah that extends across the heavens and the earth. That there should be no doubts regarding this particular idea of His power, of how far it extends, of how much it is, of how high it is. Why is this important? Because so many of our daily experiences, so many of our confrontations with polytheistic understandings of God, they reduce Him to this impersonal, far off, unconcerned deity who has nothing to do with the intricacies and the daily affairs of human beings. And that's where the room is opened up for other idols, for other intercessors, for other people who are the intermediaries between that transcendent God. His transcendence is not denied. Al-Ali, Al-Azim, as high, as great, as possible, as not even imaginable, unimaginable. Nevertheless, intimately knowledgeable. Right? So those polytheistic understandings permeate so much of our vocabulary, so much of our language, that we have to be reminded of, and we have to continue to remind each other of, and ourselves of. Yes, He is that great, but great does not mean distant. He is that high, but high does not mean removed from our daily life, unconcerned about what we do. Because it's convenient to believe that He's unconcerned with what we do. Then we can do whatever we want to. And deities are controllable. God is not. We can make them say whatever we want to. The people with power, people in authority, will make them say whatever they want. They will look to become those deities themselves. So Allah's greatness, but then His intimacy, both of them are to be taken together. And that's the challenge, that's the difficulty. That's why it is to be reiterated again and again and again and again. After every salah, remembering this closeness of Allah and greatness of Allah. Both seem to be opposites, but Allah brings them together. It is a paradox, a beautiful paradox of His attributes. And this is the ultimate understanding of Allah that we need to bring together at all times. Remind ourselves of. He can't be one we joke around with. He can't be one that we take lightly. وَهُوَ الْعَلِيُّ الْعَظِيمُ. So that knowledge on one side, exactly, the greatness on one side and the, please. Talut told them not to drink. La ikraha fid deen. There is no compulsion in religion. When you take these two ayats together, the greatness and power of Allah, the incredible knowledge of Allah, yet no compulsion. Like he said, if He wanted, they could all have believed in Isa alayhi. If He wanted, everybody could have been Muslim. but considerable importance, absolute importance in fact, given to La ikraha fi din. No compulsion in religion. Allah doesn't force. Allah does not want anybody else to force either. You do not make anybody Muslim on the point of a sword. That is simply unacceptable. Islam comes from within. The testimony, the acceptance of faith is one's own choice. You take choice away, you take humanity away. So choice is central, agency is central to being human. And anything that is Islamic, anything that is Tawheedic, is supposed to enhance that agency rather than restricting that. Because that is what Allah did. If Allah wanted everybody to believe in Him, He could have easily done that. But the entire idea of becoming human and becoming believers is in that becoming and in choosing. So it's those fetters that are to be lifted. La ikraha fi din. So there is no compulsion in religion. قَدْ تَبَيَّنَ الرُّشْدُ مِنَ الْغَيِّ. The right path has become clearly distinct from the wrong. فَمَنْ يَكْفُرْ بِالطَّاغُوتِ. So whoever renounces the taghut, the forces of shaitan, transgressions against Allah, وَيُؤْمِن بِاللَّهِ. Whoever renounces the taghut and believes in Allah, فَقَدْ اسْتَمْسَكَ بِالْعُرْوَةِ الْوُثْقَى. He has grasped the most firm handhold. Whenever you put somebody else in the place of Allah, inevitably they will let you down. You will shatter, you will break. Inevitable. Or you will spend so long pursuing them that you won't ever get them. So you won't know that if I had gotten them, it would have been over. So many people, after attaining their dreams, the girl of their dreams, or the boy of their dreams, or the job of their dreams, or the degree of their dreams, or the popularity that they thought they could never have but always wanted, but they got it. The fame, the money, insane amounts of fame and money. But when they have supposedly everything, they realize it's nothing. No wonder so many of them choose the path of suicide, because they were told it was everything. If everything is so unfulfilling, then what is it all for? What's the point? That's where hopelessness comes in. Or you have that everything and you think it's everything and you lose it. It's when you ascribe everythingness to something that is inherently limited, which is small, and you give it the place of God, and then it's gone, and you think you've lost everything. That's when hopelessness comes. That's where suicidality often comes. With this belief, with this brainwashing, that what you've lost was everything. But if you hold on to Allah, فَقَدْ اسْتَمْسَكَ بِالْعُرْوَةِ الْوُثْقَى. You've held on to the strongest handhold imaginable. لَا انْفِصَامَ لَهَا. That is not going to break at all. You take a twig from a tree and you lean against that, and it falls, it breaks, and you fall and you break your leg. You can't blame the twig. Why did the twig not hold up my weight? How was the twig so unloving? Why did the twig abandon me? Why did you lean against the twig to begin with? And that's all of other than Allah being made gods. They are the twigs that you're looking to support you the way only God can, the way only Allah. Al-Hayy Al-Qayyum. Lan fisama laha wallahu sami'un alim. Allah is hearing and knowing. Allahu waliyul ladhina amanu. Taghut is the transgressions. It's described as whatever is demonic or whatever goes beyond the boundary. Tagha is to go in excess or go beyond boundaries. So that which is asking you to cross the boundaries of Allah, the hudud of Allah, that's going to be taghut. Anything that is given the place of Allah. It can be your own hawa, system of taghut. Everything that excludes Allah Everything that claims to be absolute to the exclusion of Allah is taghut. Anything that is demanding absolute love, absolute obedience, absolute priority is taghut. It can be one's own parents. It can be one's own nafs. Whatever is looking to enslave you is taghut. And typically it's going to be more than one. Allahu waliyul ladhina amanu. Allah is the wali. He's the guardian and protector of those who believe. يُخْرِجُهُم مِّنَ الظُّلُمَاتِ إِلَى النُّورِ. He liberates them from all types and shades of darknesses towards light. وَالَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا. As for those who refuse to believe, أَوْلِيَاؤُهُمُ الطَّاغُوتِ. Their protectors are the taghut, all these other than Allah forces. يُخْرِجُونَهُم مِّنَ النُّورِ إِلَى الظُّلُمَاتِ. They drag them from light to the depths of darknesses. English doesn't have a plural for darkness. But in the Quran, the plural is employed. You leave Allah, you leave the light. There is no limit to how far the darkness goes. It goes so far that the best of minds, the most refined of intellects, of the age would say that accessing the truth is no longer possible. Can't know truth. Truth is gone. We're living in an age, we're living in a post-truth age. That's their conclusion. That's how deep the darkness goes. That's how deep the misguidance goes. They'd say everything is made up. أُولَٰئِكَ أَصْحَابُ النَّارِ. Such will be the inmates of fire. هُمْ فِيهَا خَالِدُونَ. They will live therein forever. Let's break for 5 minutes. 342 will be back. Right now we are on ayah number 260. Please. I'm sorry, we're on ayah 257. My bad. Please. Ji. Yeah. So that is definitely included in sadaqat, right? So sadaqat are under infaq. The infaq would be the broader category, and infaq is for the sake of Allah. It is for the deen. One is sadaqat, that is given to the needy of people, and then is qarz hasana, that is for the deen of Allah. Anything and everything that is done for the propagation and establishment of the deen of Allah. Fi sabilillah. In zakat that also comes, but it's lower down in the priority. As far as zakat is concerned, the priority for that would be people in need. Fi sabilillah is going to be lower down in the priority list. As qarz hasana, however, is concerned, that is what is being spoken. So the idea is to give both. Ideally, it has to be both. But if there has to be a choice that is made, then the people in need would take a priority for zakat. Beyond zakat, there has to be a commitment to the deen of Allah as well. I hope that makes sense. Bismillah. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. So continuing then from ayah number 258. أَلَمْ تَرَ إِلَى الَّذِي حَاجَّ إِبْرَاهِيمَ فِي رَبِّهِ. Haven't you considered the one who argued with Ibrahim about his Rabb, أَنْ آتَاهُ اللَّهُ الْمُلْكَ, as Allah had granted him the kingdom. إِذْ قَالَ Ibrahim, when Ibrahim said, رَبِّيَ الَّذِي يُحْيِي وَيُمِيتُ, my Rabb is the one who brings to life and puts to death. قَالَ أَنَا أُحْيِي وَأُمِيتُ, he said, it's me who brings to life and puts to death. And so what he did was he had a person who was on death row and said, you're free to go, you don't have to die anymore. And the person who was innocent and everything, and he said, I'll kill him. And he had him killed. And see, I give life, I give death, I have ultimate power. Ibrahim alayhi salam has him exactly where he wants. He says, okay. قال إبراهيم فإن الله يأتي بالشمس من المشرق فأتي بها من المغرب. Allah brings the sun from the east. Why don't you make it rise from the west? So he uses the person's own logic against him. You presented this logic. This was your demonstration. MashaAllah, tabarakallah, very consistent. Let's take it further. Let's see if you can go to this point as well. فَبُهِتَ الَّذِي كَفَرَ. So the disbeliever was utterly shut up. وَاللَّهُ لَا يَهْدِي الْقَوْمَ الظَّالِمِينَ. And Allah does not guide such unjust people. أَوْ كَالَّذِي مَرَّ عَلَىٰ قَرْيَةٍ. Or did you not reflect upon the one who passed by a town, Uzair alayhi salam, وَهِيَ خَاوِيَةٌ عَلَىٰ عُرُوشِهَا, while it was fallen at its roofs, it was turned to rubble. قَالَ أَنَّا يُحْيِي هَذِهِ اللَّهُ بَعْدَ مَوْتِهَا. He exclaimed, how will Allah revive this town after its death? فَأَمَاتَهُ اللَّهُ مِئَةَ عَامٍ. So Allah gave him death for 100 years. ثُمَّ بَعَثَهُ. Then he raised him to life again. قَالَ كَمْ لَبِثْتَ. Allah asked him, how long did you stay? قَالَ لَبِثْتُ يَوْمًا أَوْ بَعْضَ يَوْمٍ. He said, maybe a day or a little less than that. I slept for long. I know it was longer than a night's sleep, but maybe a day's sleep or less than a day's sleep. قَالَ بَلْ لَبِثْتَ مِئَةَ عَامٍ. Allah said, no, you stayed for 100 years. فَانظُرْ إِلَىٰ طَعَامِكَ وَشَرَابِكَ لَمْ يَتَسَنَّ. Look at your food and drink, it is not rotten. وَانظُرْ إِلَىٰ حِمَارِكَ. But also look at your donkey. And the donkey's bones had decayed. This and the next story, two contexts of the prophets of God in their existential struggles, in their life, their faith too, they had questions. They too, and those questions are entertained, they are responded to. They are not like the questions of Bani Israel. They are questions coming from a place of genuine need to know, to influence faith better. They are questions that are not looking to run away from practical action and responsibility. They are questions that are coming with the intent of increasing in action and responsibility. And so responses are adequately and appropriately given. A demonstration is given to Uzair alayhi salam. وَلِنَجْعَلَكَ آيَةً لِلنَّاسِ. And this will make you a sign for mankind. وَانظُرْ إِلَى الْعِظَامِ. Now look at the bones. كَيْفَ نُنْشِزُهَا. How we assemble them. ثُمَّ نَكْسُوهَا لَحْمًا. Then we cover them with flesh in order to bring it to life again. فَلَمَّا تَبَيَّنَ لَهُ. So when it became evident to him that Allah brings the dead to life, قَالَ أَعْلَمُ أَنَّ اللَّهَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. He said, now I know that Allah has power over everything. Again, his people were completely decimated, completely dead. This too has been interpreted in both ways. These people are lost. How can they ever be revived? So either it's a dead town altogether, or they've gone so far away from faith. They are so misguided. And his shock, his frustration with their misguidance is being given a demonstration: biological life death and then spiritual life death. The Lord for both is Allah. وَإِذْ قَالَ إِبْرَاهِيمُ. And also remember and reflect upon Ibrahim when he said, رَبِّ أَرِنِي كَيْفَ تُحْيِي الْمَوْتَى. My Rabb, how do you bring the dead to life? قَالَ وَلَمْ تُؤْمِنْ. Allah asked him, don't you believe? قَالَ بَلَى. He said, yes, of course I believe. وَلَكِنْ لِيَطْمَئِنَّ قَلْبِي. But I asked to satisfy my heart. Again, we get levels of iman straight off from here. That you can have belief. Nevertheless, your heart is not mutma'in. There is a degree of dissatisfaction that persists. That requires further exploration, that requires further demonstration. And in Ibrahim alayhi salam's case, he gets a demonstration for the itminan of his qalb. قَالَ فَخُذْ أَرْبَعَةً مِنَ الطَّيْرِ. Allah said, take 4 birds, فَصُرْهُنَّ إِلَيْكَ, commit them to yourself, ثُمَّ اجْعَلْ عَلَى كُلِّ جَبَلٍ مِنْهُنَّ جُزْءًا, and put a piece of their flesh on each hilltop, obviously after having chopped them up. ثُمَّ ادْعُوهُنَّ, then call them back. يَأْتِينَكَ سَعْيًا, they will all come to you right away. وَاعْلَمْ أَنَّ اللَّهَ عَزِيزٌ حَكِيمٌ. Know that Allah is mighty and wise. That greatness of Allah. And then the prophets having very real, very human experiences in which they are asking for their doubts to be clarified. So you can be at the same time half sure but wholehearted. There is a level of doubt that can persist. Not all questions, not all doubts can be alleviated perfectly by any ideology. There will always be room. There will always be some inconsistency. And even when that inconsistency is intellectually resolved, it is cognitively understood, for that to be emotionally internalized, that takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of doing. Here again we get to see the relevance of why salah was on the tongue of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam when he is passing away. And for his ummah, his concern is prayer, 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 prayer. Because it is in the act of prayer that that reflection, that conscious, deliberate remembrance is taken to these points that this, what the Quran is promising, becomes a reality for us. And so we make it a reality by sheer repetition. We believe it cognitively, intellectually it makes sense. But for it to be internalized in our hearts, for it to become a part of our very being, that requires frequent recitation of the Quran, talking about the Quran, Quran in prayer, all of these becoming real conversations for us, so that it becomes as it became for the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum. Like Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu said that even if I were to see the hellfire or see heaven, it would not increase me in faith about it. That's how far he already is. And that's something that you have to get to and struggle towards. It's not a one-time thing. It's not something that you just have. It is a legitimate struggle that the struggles of the prophets gives us hope for. That they too had to go at their own level, like Einstein said to children struggling with math in 5th grade, if you're having trouble in math, trust me, I am as well. At their own level, of course, but problems nevertheless. Please. I am not aware, I'm not sure. I don't. Okay, I don't know of that. I do not know of that. مَثَلُ الَّذِينَ يُنْفِقُونَ أَمْوَالَهُمْ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. This is the 9th time in Surah Baqarah that the subject of infaq fi sabilillah is being brought up. Again, the integral importance of spending. Go back to the earliest class, those of you who were here when we spoke about the importance of Baqarah. and how Baqarah brings life into our homes, how it makes shayateen run away. And if you were to summarize it in one action, although that's very difficult to do, but it would be infaq fi sabilillah, spending in the way of Allah. The 9th time the subject of infaq fi sabilillah comes up in this surah. مَثَلُ الَّذِينَ يُنْفِقُونَ أَمْوَالَهُمْ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ كَمَثَلِ حَبَّةٍ. The example of those who spend their wealth in the cause of Allah, كَمَثَلِ حَبَّةٍ, is like a seed, أَنْبَتَتْ سَبْعَ سَنَابِلَ. This sprouts and grows into 7 spikes. فِي كُلِّ سُنْبُلَةٍ مِئَةُ حَبَّةٍ. In each spike there is 100 grains. وَاللَّهُ يُضَاعِفُ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ. And Allah gives multiplied for whoever He wills, so even more than 700 times if He wants. وَاللَّهُ وَاسِعٌ عَلِيمٌ. And Allah is all-encompassing, all-knowing. الَّذِينَ يُنْفِقُونَ أَمْوَالَهُمْ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. Those who spend their wealth in the cause of Allah. ثُمَّ لَا يُتْبِعُونَ مَا أَنْفَقُوا مَنًّا وَلَا أَذًى. Then they do not follow up what they have spent with reminders of the gift, neither do they offend. لَهُمْ أَجْرُهُمْ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ. For them is their reward with their Rabb. And if I recall correctly, this is Abu Huraira radiallahu ta'ala anhu, who was going from Sahabi to Sahabi, reciting this ayah, asking about what it meant. And they kept giving him the tafsir of the ayah, of what it meant. What he had in mind was he was hungry. He went to Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he explained the ayah to him. He went to Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he explained the ayah to him. He went to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he smiled. And he asked for milk to be brought. And he asked for him to invite the rest of the Ashab al-Sufha as well. And he told Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala anhu, give them to drink first. And he's like, I thought this was for me. He's like, this is a small cup, how is this going to work? But he complies, he does what Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam tells him to do. So he gives to everyone, to everyone, to everyone. And he's giving to each person, he's thinking, okay, there's not going to be anything left for me. But then his turn comes and Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam says, drink, and he drinks. And he puts it, takes the cup away, and Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam says, drink more, and he drinks more. And he keeps telling him to drink more till he says, Ya Rasulullah, I can't drink anymore. ولا الذين ينفقون أموالهم في سبيل الله ثم لا يتبعون ما أنفقوا منا ولا أذى. Then they do not follow up what they have spent with reminders of the gift, nor offend. It is very easy to give in the sake of Allah, but not for the sake of giving for the sake of Allah, not for the benefit of the others, but for establishing your own authority, for popularizing your own righteousness. And one of the expressions of that is you think that the people you're giving to, you're doing them a favor. And that you are now entitled to actually mentioning that favor upon them or even hurting them with your words, demeaning them, putting them down. The attitude that the Quran engenders is that you're the one in need. The one who's giving, the one who has wealth, is the one in need. The one who's taking is offering you an opportunity to purify yourself, to become more spiritual, to guard against hypocrisy. Given the danger of hypocrisy and given the danger of going without food, obviously the danger of hypocrisy is greater. Then in that equation, who is doing who a favor? The one who's taking the money or the one who's giving the money? The one who's giving the money is the one who's being favored. He should be grateful to the person giving them the opportunity to purify themselves, to prevent against hypocrisy. So rather than putting them down, we need to remember what is going on here. And this is personal development. As far as the Quran's program for personal development is concerned, it begins with infaq. And there's a lot of things that come in between, but it also ends with infaq. Spending in the way of Allah, giving, giving, giving. لَهُمْ أَجْرُهُمْ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ وَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. They have nothing to fear, nor would they regret. قَوْلٌ مَعْرُوفٌ وَمَغْفِرَةٌ خَيْرٌ. Kind speech and forgiveness are better. مِنْ صَدَقَةٍ يَتْبَعُهَا أَذَى. Than a charity followed by a hurt, by an insult. وَاللَّهُ غَنِيٌّ حَلِيمٌ. Allah is free of need, forbearing. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, you who have believed, la tubtilu sadaqatikum bil manni wal adha. Do not make your charity worthless by reminders of your generosity and also by hurting the feelings of those who are the recipients. Kalladhi yunfiqu malahu ri'a an-nas, like the one who spends his wealth to be seen by the people. Wala yu'minu billahi wal yawmil akhir, and does not believe in Allah or in the last day. فَمَثَلُهُ كَمَثَلِ صَفْوَانٍ عَلَيْهِ تُرَابٍ. His example is that of a hard barren rock covered with a thin layer of soil. فَأَصَابَهُ وَابِلٌ فَتَرَكَهُ صَلْدًا. Then a rainstorm hits it and turns it to bare rock. You do not want your charity to be just a one layer which is easily washed off. You want your charity to be a vegetation, a good plant, because there are storms coming. The different fitan that come, the different trials and tribulations that come, they are storms that if your personality is not protected by your infaq fi sabilillah, you will be swept away in those storms. فَمَثَلُهُ كَمَثَلِ صَفْوَانٍ عَلَيْهِ تُرَابٍ. His example is that of a hard, barren rock covered with a thin layer of soil. فَأَصَابَهُ وَابِلٌ فَتَرَكَهُ صَلْدًا. The rainstorm hits it and turns it to bare rock. لَا يَقْدِرُونَ عَلَى شَيْءٍ مِمَّا كَسَبُوا. They are unable to keep anything of what they have earned. وَاللَّهُ لَا يَهْدِي الْقَوْمَ الْكَافِرِينَ. And Allah does not guide such ungrateful people. وَمَثَلُ الَّذِينَ يُنْفِقُونَ أَمْوَالَهُمْ ابْتِغَاءَ مَرْضَاتِ اللَّهِ. An example of those who spend their wealth in pursuit of Allah's pleasure. وَتَثْبِيتًا مِنْ أَنفُسِهِمْ. Out of a strong inner motivation. كَمَثَلِ جَنَّةٍ بِالرَّبْوَةٍ. Like a garden on a higher level of earth. أَصَابَهَا وَابِلٌ. If a heavy rain falls, and if we continue with the analogy that we did in the previous ayah, if heavy rains means trials and tribulations, then these people who are given to sadaqat, to infaq fi sabilillah, to giving in the way of Allah, and their personality is that strong, trials and tribulations make them even stronger. So a heavy rain, what does it do to this garden on a higher level of earth? فَآتَتْ أُكُلَهَا ضِعْفَيْنِ. It will bring its fruit double in increase, doubled up. فَإِن لَمْ يُصِبْهَا وَابِلٌ. Even if it does not get a heavy rain, فَطَّلْ. Then a drizzle is also enough for this vegetation to bear fruit. So giving in the way of Allah prepares that personality to be fruitful regardless of circumstance. Ease or difficulty, hardship or no hardship, they will be fruitful. Wallahu bima ta'maluna basir. And Allah sees whatever it is that you do. Ayawaddu ahadukum. Would any of you like an takuna lahu jannatum min nakhilin wa a'nab, that he has a garden of date palms and grapevines, tajri min tahtiha al-anhar, underneath which rivers flow, lahu fiha min kulli thamarat, there are all kinds of fruit for him therein, wa asabahu al-kibr, but he has become old, wa lahu dhurriyatun du'afa, while he has weak children. فَأَصَابَهَا إِعْصَارٌ فِيهِ نَارٌ فَاحْتَرَقَتْ. It is struck by a fiery whirlwind, burning it. كَذَلِكَ يُبَيِّنُ اللَّهُ لَكُمُ الْآيَاتِ. This way Allah makes His signs clear to you. لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَفَكَّرُونَ. So that you may reflect. All the good that you do, all the good that you do, you need for it to be preserved. You need for it to be protected. You can have all the good in the world, but if there is nothing that is done to protect it actively, it can all go to waste. Please. Yeah. Hmm. 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 So there is, again, if I'm spending money to control the outcome, then I need to reflect. What is it that I'm giving my money for? I need to trust the community. I need to have some trust. Yes, there is accountability for sure, but I'm not claiming a dictatorship. Because I pay, I call the shots. That's not how charity should work. That hierarchy of who's in charge, of who calls the shots, of who makes the decisions, is independent of who gives the money. And for us to be able to create systems in which this independence is maintained is critical. So accountability for sure, but absolute authority and dictation, that's problematic. Accountability is necessary. Yeah. Yeah. I need to remember, and same with spending or investing your time. In community work, complete agreement is impossible. There will always be disagreement. But then to use money for political advantages, it becomes problematic. It becomes deeply problematic. Please. So, will one of you want that you have a garden of date palms and grapevine? So you have all of these good that you've done. In a lot of places, Allah talks about hypocrites. So for example, in Surah Ahzab, in Surah At-Tawbah, when the demand came for them to live up to the demand of Iman, to the call or to the responsibility of Iman, they were not ready for it. They did not step up. Rather, they said what they should not have said. They did what they should not have did. They should not have done. So whatever good they did before that, they prayed salah behind Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in masjidhamzah. All of them, their entire prayers, they prayed more in masjidhamzah than all of us combined. But because all of those righteous actions, legitimately righteous actions of prayer, of dhikr, of supporting the community, this, that, the third, but because infaq fi sabilillah was not done as a routine, as a regular prevention against the development of hypocrisy, when the strict demand on the community came, when tribulation came, when fitan came, when the Quraysh and Ghatafan and Banu Nadir, when they came, and now your iman is tested, then hypocrisy comes out. Then all the good that has been done before goes to waste. So it's like having grapevines and gardens and fruits and rivers and all of that is there. But it's not protected. The protection comes from infaq fi sabil. In this analogy, the strong children that help you in your old age, that's your investments taking shape. They're protecting you. They're making sure that nothing is lost. Right? So, going back to the analogy in the very beginning of Surah Al-Baqarah, when there's light, we move. When you move in light, there's reward for that. But when there's darkness, we stop. Now that's problematic. Right? So we keep that in mind, recognizing that every good that we've done, however great it may have been, can just as well go to waste. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu anfiqu, please. Okay. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu anfiqu min tayyibati ma kasabtum, you who have believed, spend in the way of Allah from the pure things that you have earned, wa mimma akhrajna lakum min al-ard, and of what we have produced for you from earth, wa la tayammamul khabitha minhu tunfiqun, and don't aim to spend from it the defective of it, wa lastum bi akhidhihi, and you wouldn't have taken it if it was given to you. Charity, infaq fi sabilillah, is not taking out the trash. It is not for you to get rid of the garbage in your house. That's not what infaq fi sabilillah is. And symbolically, we put it in trash bags to give it out as well, to make sure we put the cap on it, that it is in fact the garbage that we're... No, the best of what you've earned, what you would have wanted for yourself as well. وَلَا تَيَمَّمُوا الْخَبِيثَ مِنْهُ تُنْفِقُونَ. Don't aim to spend from it the defective of it. وَلَسْتُمْ بِآخِذِهِ. You would not have taken it if it was given to you. إِلَّا أَن تُغْمِضُوا فِي. Except with closed eyes. Hence the black trash bags, so nobody can see what's inside. وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ غَنِيٌّ حَمِيدٌ. And know that Allah is free of need, worthy of praise. الشَّيْطَانُ يَعِدُكُمُ الْفَقْرِ. Shaitan threatens you of poverty. This is an experience that every single one of us can have. Think about, please. Please, please, please. So, giving out used clothes is definitely better than throwing them away and so they're not useful for anyone. But saying that my giving away of used clothes and broken toys is all the infaq fi sabilillah I have to do, that's dangerous. Give that, fair enough. But if that's all of what my charity is, I am standing on very thin ice. I am waiting for that storm to just blow away the dirt off the rock and expose the barrenness inside. I am not a fruitful person. Again, this is character building. This is personality development. Spending in the way of Allah is for us to become better people. Whatever benefit it offers community is secondary. The human resource that is developed, the human resource we become as people who are so prone to giving, that's what this encourages. The community, we invert it. When we're talking about sadaqat, we're talking about charity, we're always talking about how much benefit it gives to the community and people are hungry and you need to feed their hunger. That's all good, of course that's important. But the Quranic priority is the resource that you're going to become. That how you grow as in spirituality, how you become a person of sacrifice, how you, when the going get tough, are going to be the foremost in the front lines. That's what you're investing in. And that's more important than financial rehabilitation, as important as financial rehabilitation may be for others. The character building of the leaders of the community. That's the emphasis here. Again, ash-shaytanu ya'idukumul faqr. Thought experiment. Every single one of us will have, this is how you prove the existence of shaitan within you, or at least the reality of shaitan. Whenever a donation call is made, whenever there's an opportunity to spend in the way of Allah, just make note of all the thoughts that go out in your head, of how many different avenues you need to save your money for, of how many responsibilities there are on your shoulders, of how you need to look at this and look at that, be shrewd, be careful, be thoughtful, don't be extreme. All of those thoughts will come in. And compare your own mindset when you're on Amazon, when you're shopping online, or at Target, or whatever, wherever you shop. Throw this in the cart, throw that in the cart, buy this, buy that, buy 3 pairs of the same shoes. Oh dear Lord, I didn't realize this was already there. The two attitudes. Why in the former was our mind so preoccupied with responsibility this and responsibility that, and what if this happens and what if that happens? That's your experience of personal shaitan. الشَّيْطَانُ يَعِدُكُمُ الْفَقْرِ. Shaitan promises you, threatens you of poverty. If you give in the way of Allah, you won't have anything left. وَيَأْمُرُكُمْ بِالْفَحْشَاءِ. And commands you to immorality. Don't spend on one side, indulge in immoralities. What do the two have in common? Selfishness. What was at the root of hypocrisy? Selfishness. Shaitan wants you to be selfish and self-serving, so that even your religion becomes selfish. Allahu ya'idukum maghfirah. Maghfiratan minhu wa fadla. Allah promises you His forgiveness and favor. Wallahu wasi'un alim. Allah is all encompassing, knowing. You take your pick. You want to listen to shaitan, you want to go down that route? Or you want to go and follow what Allah is asking you to follow? يُؤْتِ الْحِكْمَةَ مَنْ يَشَاءُ. He grants wisdom to whomever He wills. And upon this, the scholars comment that the way to wisdom is spending in the way of Allah. If you want to attain wisdom, and that's wisdom is fortitude of thought. There's a fragmentary way of looking at things. As one of the scholars mentions, this was Maulana Madudi rahimahullah, he was asked that you visited this incredible famous scholar. What did you think of him? First he tried ignoring, didn't say much, was avoiding giving his comments. But then he says he was a junkyard of knowledge. Ilm ka bahut bada kabaad khana. If you don't have wisdom putting all the information together, you can have factoids about everything. But practical wisdom, how do you prioritize from that immense, what is the difference between a library and a junkyard? That's the difference between a person of wisdom and a person of random accumulated facts. We need to be people of wisdom. And the way to that too is opened up by infaq fi sabilillah. How? Knowledge demands action with respect to whatever is a priority in the world around you. The unwillingness to act because it threatens personal convenience, personal preservation, will make everything fragmented for us. When that is set aside, when to suffer, to struggle, to sacrifice is not that big of an issue anymore, then speaking the truth, seeing the truth, acting by the truth will naturally become easier, and you will see that as a whole. يُؤْتِ الْحِكْمَةَ مَنْ يَشَاءُ. Allah grants wisdom to whoever He wills. وَمَنْ يُؤْتَ الْحِكْمَةَ. And whoever is granted wisdom, فَقَدْ أُوتِيَ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا. He is given a great wealth. Priorities, perspectives being changed. The khayr, the wealth you want to accumulate, is the wealth of wisdom. وَمَا يَذَّكَّرُ إِلَّا أُولُو الْأَلْبَابِ. And none will take this lesson except those who understand. وَمَا أَنفَقْتُم مِّن نَفَقَةٍ أَوْ نَذَرْتُم مِّن نَذْرٍ. Whenever you spend in charity or vow a vow, فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ يَعْلَمُ. Allah definitely knows it. وَمَا لِلظَّالِمِينَ مِنْ أَنصَارٍ. And the unfair people will get no helpers. إِن تُبْدُوا الصَّدَقَاتِ فَنِعِمَّا هِي. If you give in charity in public, it's good. وَإِن تُخْفُوهَا وَتُؤْتُوهَا الْفُقَرَاءِ. But if you give it to the poor secretly, فَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ. That is better for you. وَيُكَفِّرُ عَنْكُم مِّن سَيِّئَاتِكُمْ. And it will remove from you some of your sins. وَاللَّهُ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ خَبِيرٌ. And Allah is aware of what you do. Every single act you do has an impact on your conduct, on your personality. Every evil lives inside you. Whatever bad you've done is pushing you further towards being more bad. Whatever good you do similarly pushes you closer towards more good. What practicing charity does is the effects of those bad actions that are more likely to make you a bad person and therefore one deserving of hellfire. It blots that out. It undoes. It's a control Z of your spirituality that allows you to become a better person, so that the impact on my personality, why do I find it so difficult to commit myself to that course or that class or that many taraweeh or that much Quran or that learning or that work for the deen of Allah or that commitment? Why? How about I try spending? Because there's something of my sins that is holding me back. Spending in the way of Allah will open those doors for me. It's like the handbrake on your car. You don't release it, the car won't move regardless of how you can put the pedal to the floor. It's not going to move. The handbrake's up. How do you release it? Infaq fi sabilillah. Spend in the way of Allah. لَيْسَ عَلَيْكَ هُدَاهُمْ. You are not responsible to guide them. وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ يَهْدِي مَن يَشَاءُ. In fact, it is Allah who guides whoever He wants. وَمَا تُنْفِقُوا مِنْ خَيْرٍ فَلِأَنفُسِكُمْ. Whatever you spend in charity is of benefit to you. وَمَا تُنْفِقُونَ إِلَّا ابْتِغَاءَ وَجْهِ اللَّهِ, provided you spend only to please Allah. وَمَا تُنْفِقُوا مِنْ خَيْرٍ يُوَفَّى إِلَيْكُمْ, and whatever wealth you spend will be paid back to you in full. وَأَنْتُمْ لَا تُظْلَمُونَ, and you will not be treated unjustly. لِلْفُقَرَاءِ الَّذِينَ أُحْصِرُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ, charity is for the needy who are engaged so much in the cause of Allah. لَا يَسْتَطِيعُونَ ضَرْبًا فِي الْأَرْضِ. This was the ayah that Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala anhu was reciting, that he came to Umar, Abu Bakr, and Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. They cannot move about in the land to earn their livelihood. يَحْسَبُهُمُ الْجَاهِلُ أَغْنِيَاءَ مِنَ التَّعَفُّفِ. The ignorant thinks that they are well off because of their restraint, because they don't openly ask. تَعْرِفُهُمْ بِسِيمَاهُمْ. You can only recognize them by their characteristic sign. لَا يَسْأَلُونَ النَّاسَ إِلْحَافًا. They don't ask people persistently. وَمَا تُنْفِقُوا مِنْ خَيْرٍ, and whatever of wealth you spend on them, فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ بِهِ عَلِيمٌ. Allah knows for sure. This was a characteristic of the people, the Ashab al-Sufha, the first university really of Islam. These are the students of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, having committed themselves to him to make sure that they don't forget, or they don't they're not in any way deprived of anything from the wisdom that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam shares. So they've committed themselves completely, which means they can't fend for themselves, they can't work. They're not going to associate a paycheck with their services. And because we're here, we demand this much money or that much money. No. They've made that commitment. If something comes, good enough. If not, they are very willingly in it, knowing that this is a life of poverty. فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ بِهِ عَلِيمٌ. الَّذِينَ يُنْفِقُونَ أَمْوَالَهُمْ بِاللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ. Those who spend their wealth by night and day, سِرًّا وَعَلَانِيَةً, secretly and openly. فَلَهُمْ أَجْرُهُمْ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ. Their reward is with their Rabb. وَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. They have nothing to fear or grieve. الَّذِينَ يَأْكُلُونَ الرِّبَا. As far as your relationship with wealth is concerned, it goes through two extremes. One extreme is that you spend in the way of Allah. What is going to be the return? It's going to be in akhirah. It is in the form of ajr, it is in the form of hikmah, it is in the form of spiritual development. There is nothing concrete that you see coming back from it, and you're completely okay with that. That's the best use of your wealth that you can possibly do. Like Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam asks Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha about the goat that is sacrificed, and asks what remains of it, Ya Aisha. And she had kept Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam's favorite part of flesh from it, the shoulder of it, and she says, that's all that remains of it, everything has been given away. He says, no, everything remains of it, that's all that has been spent, in the sense that what we've kept is what we've wasted. What we've given is what we have invested, what we have accumulated. So this mindset, that's the best use of wealth that you can have. The worst use of wealth is to give it with the intent of exploiting somebody for it, with the intent of using their poverty as business. So you take my money, you take these $100, give me back 110. And this is the worst sin imaginable. Shirk is the worst ideological, or in terms of aqidah, in terms of belief, shirk is the worst you can do. In terms of practical sin, riba is the worst imaginable. The smallest part of it is to commit zina with your mother. The equivalent of the smallest fraction of riba. That's its equivalent. So there is no space, no acceptability in anything, anyone associated with Tawheed as far as riba is concerned. It is tantamount to announcing war with Allah and His Messenger. And we see that. I ask everybody to reflect upon the kind of people the Quraysh have to be to attack Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam with swords and arrows and spears. How low do you have to go in order to take weapons against Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? How depraved do you have to be? How filthy And engaging in riba is the same. It is exactly the same. That's the worst. Again, simple example. The poor have $10 collectively. The rich have $100 collectively. The poor tell the rich, we need money. The rich give them 50, tell them give us 60 back. They give them 60 back, now the poor are standing on 0, and the rich are at 110. And that's how the poor continue to get poorer and poorer and poorer. The rich continue to get richer and richer and richer. And when this extends to the level of countries, when this extends to the level of entire nations, when something like the genocide of Raza takes place, the countries with the strongest armies and militaries in the Muslim world are utterly helpless because they're so bound in debt. They're so afraid for their existence. There's nothing that can be done. The power that the rich then exert over the poor, because the poor, they entered into this vicious cycle which you never get out of, you never grow from. There is no blessing in it. And this Islam is fundamentally against. This exploitation cannot take place. The kind of person that such a riba-based community, riba-based economy results in, the kind of psychology that a riba-based economy results in is essentially a selfish individual. The average citizen of a riba-based economy is a selfish, self-serving, self-obsessed narcissist. Please. That's what I just said. That's why there's utterly nothing. Pakistan is the strongest military in the Muslim world, apparently. Utterly useless. Utterly useless. Those soldiers might as well be wearing bangles. That's all they're good for. That's what IMF loans do. They turn men into women with mehndi on their hands. Anyways, please. Yeah. So the poor are getting themselves stuck in that riba. Of course, the situation or the prohibition against them would not be as strict as those who are rich, but it is still engaging in a riba-based transaction. You are still contributing to a system or becoming a part of something which is inherently against Allah and His Messenger. The ayat in Surah Ali Imran that talk about riba, those are the ones that talk about it being a war against Allah and His Messenger. And they come bang in the middle of the commentary of the Quran on the Battle of Uhud. It comes right in the middle of that theme. It seems like, what just happened? We're talking about Uhud. Where did riba come from? And that's where that warning is given, that this is like war against Allah and His Messenger. Here, the kind of person that it produces. كَمَا يَقُومُ الَّذِي يَتَخَبَّطَهُ الشَّيْطَانُ مِنَ الْمَسِّ. Except as those whom shaitan has driven to insanity. So self-obsessed. The closest that you see a comparison to in the Quran is when Lut alayhi salam, when the angels came as those handsome boys and the people of Lut saw them, they were so driven by their desires that they forgot everything. That's the sort of person a person of riba, the average community member of a riba-based economy, is going to be turned into. There is a debate within psychology circles that narcissism should not be a diagnostic category. A narcissistic personality disorder should not be a personality disorder anymore. Why? Because it's so common. Everyone has it. Why should you call it an abnormality when it's the norm? That goes against the definition of abnormality. Everyone's narcissistic. ذَلِكَ بِأَنَّهُمْ قَالُوا. That is because they say, إِنَّمَا الْبَيْعُ مِثْلُ الرِّبَا. Trade is just like riba. وَأَحَلَّ اللَّهُ الْبَيْعَ وَحَرَّمَ الرِّبَا. But Allah has permitted trading while He has forbidden riba. فَمَنْ جَاءَهُ مَوْعِظَةٌ مِّن رَبِّهِ فَانْتَهَى. So now the one who receives admonition from his Rabb and desists, فَلَهُ مَا سَلَفَ. He can retain his previous gains. وَأَمْرُهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ. And his case is referred to Allah. وَمَنْ عَادَ. While those who repeat, فَأُولَٰئِكَ أَصْحَابُ النَّارِ. Such are the inmates of the hellfire. It is one thing to say, okay, the riba-based economy, banking, credit cards, this, that, the third, what do we do, what do we not do? But it goes without saying all of those fiqh discussions to their own side. If a community of believers, a community of Quran is completely negligent, heedless of how an alternative system which is more Quranic is necessary, it is a responsibility. If that is forgotten, that's unforgivable. Being stuck for the time being, fair enough. But not having any long-term vision, any investment of human resource, of community resource, towards the alleviation, towards the liberation of humanity from this heinous, most heinous crime against Allah, against humanity. To be forgetful of that, what answer do we bring to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? يَمْحَقُ اللَّهُ الرِّبَا وَيُرْبِ الصَّدَقَاتِ. Allah deprives riba of all blessings and He lets charities grow. And this is economically provable. Within economics, I don't know much economics, this much I do know. Business, charities, they allow a community, an economy to flourish. Interest saps that economy of any profit. It is inherent. These are principles that the economists will talk about. You don't need a psychologist to be telling you this. You don't need the ayat of the Quran to be telling you this. These are now something that we have experienced over the past century or so, multiple times over, to our own detriment. Wallahu la yuhibbu kulla kafarin athim. Allah does not like the ungrateful sinner. Inna alladhina amanu wa amilu salihat. Surely those who believe and act righteously. Wa aqamu salata wa atu zakah. And establish prayer and give zakah. Lahum ajruhum inda rabbihim. There is a reward for them and with their Rabb. Wa la khawfun alayhim wa lahum yahzanun. And they have nothing to fear nor grieve. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu taqullah. You who have believed, have the taqwa of Allah. Wa dharu ma baqiya min ar-riba. And waive off whatever remains due to you from riba in kuntum mu'minin. If you really are believers. Fa illam taf'alu. And if you don't do that, فَأْذَنُوا بِحَرْبٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. Then hear the announcement of war from Allah and His Messenger. وَإِن تُبْتُمْ. And if you repent, فَلَكُمْ رُؤُوسُ أَمْوَالِكُمْ. Then you can retain the principal amount. لَا تَظْلِمُونَ وَلَا تُظْلَمُونَ. Don't exploit and you will not be exploited. وَإِن كَانَ ذُو عُسْرَةٍ. And if the debtor is in financial constraint, فَنَظْرَةٌ إِلَى مَيْسَرَةٍ. Grant him time until it is easy for him to pay. وَأَن تَصَدَّقُوا. But if you remit out of charity, خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ إِن كُنتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. It is better for you if you really come to know. وَاتَّقُوا يَوْمًا تُرْجَعُونَ فِيهِ إِلَى اللَّهِ. And be fearful of the day when you would all be brought back to Allah. ثُمَّ تُوَفَّى كُلُّ نَفْسٍ مَا كَسَبَتْ. That every individual will be paid in full whatever they have earned. وَهُمْ لَا يُظْلَمُونَ. And they will not face any injustice. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. You who have believed. إِذَا تَدَايَنْتُمْ بِدَيْنٍ إِلَى أَجَلٍ مُسَمَّى. Now comes the middle category. The best category, infaq fi sabilillah. Worst category, riba. Middle, business. When you contract a debt for a fixed period, faktubu, write it down. Now this is a debt which is not associated with any riba. It is in the process of business transactions or whatever they may be. وَلْيَكْتُبْ بَيْنَكُمْ كَاتِبٌ بِالْعَدْلِ. And let a scribe write it down with justice between you. وَلَا يَأْبَ كَاتِبٌ أَنْ يَكْتُبَ كَمَا عَلَّمَهُ اللَّهِ. And the scribe should not refuse to write as he has been taught by Allah. فَلْيَكْتُبْ. So he must write. وَلْيُمْلِلِ الَّذِي عَلَيْهِ الْحَقِّ. So let the one who incurs the liability, the debtor, dictate the terms and conditions. وَلْيَتَّقِ اللَّهَ رَبَّهُ. And he must observe the taqwa of Allah, his Rabb. وَلَا يَبْخَسْ مِنْهُ شَيْئًا. And he should not diminish anything from it. فَإِنْ كَانَ الَّذِي عَلَيْهِ الْحَقُّ سَفِيهًا أَوْ ضَعِيفًا. But if the one who incurs the liability is not mentally sound or is weak in some other way, أَوْ لَا يَسْتَطِيعُ أَنْ يُمِلَّهُ. Or for some other reason unable to dictate by himself, فَلْيُمْلِلْ وَلِيُّهُ بِالْعَدْلِ. Let his guardian dictate with justice. وَاسْتَشْهِدُوا شَهِيدَيْنِ مِنْ رِجَالِكُمْ. And get 2 witnesses from your own men to witness such transactions. فَإِن لَمْ يَكُونَا رَجُلَيْنِ. But if 2 men are not not available, فَرَجُلٌ وَامْرَأَتَانِ مِمَّنْ تَرْضَوْنَ مِنَ الشُّهَدَاءِ, then a man and two women from those whom you approve as witnesses. أَن تَضِلَّ إِحْدَاهُمَا, that if one of the two women forgets, فَتُذَكِّرَ إِحْدَاهُمَا الْأُخْرَى, then the other can remind her. وَلَا يَأْبَ الشُّهَدَاءُ إِذَا مَا دُعُوا, and the witness must not refuse when they are summoned. وَلَا تَسْأَمُوا أَن تَكْتُبُوهُ صَغِيرًا أَوْ كَبِيرًا إِلَىٰ أَجَلِهِ, and do not be lazy to write it down for its fixed period, whether the amount is small or big. ذَلِكُمْ أَقْسَطُ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ, this attitude is closer to justice in the sight of Allah. وَأَقْوَمُ لِلشَّهَادَةِ, and also more solid as evidence. وَأَدْنَى أَلَّا تَرْتَابُوا, and more convenient to prevent doubts. إِلَّا أَن تَكُونَ تِجَارَةً حَاضِرَةً, except if it is a commercial transaction concluded on the spot, تُدِيرُونَهَا بَيْنَكُمْ, which you deal with one another. فَلَيْسَ عَلَيْكُمْ جُنَاحٌ أَلَّا تَكْتُبُوهَا, there is no blame on you if you do not write. وَأَشْهِدُوا إِذَا تَبَايَعْتُمْ, and do have someone as witnesses whenever you settle a commercial deal. وَلَا يُضَارَّ كَاتِبٌ وَلَا شَهِيدٌ, and let no harm be done to the scribe or the witness. وَإِن تَفْعَلُوا فَإِنَّهُ فُسُوقٌ بِكُمْ, and if you do so, it will be an act of transgression. وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ, and observe the taqwa of Allah. وَيُعَلِّمُكُمُ اللَّهُ, and Allah teaches you. وَاللَّهُ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ عَلِيمٌ, and Allah knows everything. This is the longest ayah in the Quran depicting the importance, the significance on economic life that Allah gives. Contrary to that idea of spirituality, that idea of religiosity that turns away from the world, the importance, the degree to which the world is emphasized, the life of this world, social transactions, economic transactions are emphasized in the Quran. We see how the longest ayah is dedicated to entirely, quote-unquote, secular transactions. Again, the demonic religiosity that we spoke about last time, which wants to assume that there is absolutely nothing religious about these worldly dealings, that you need to shun them or turn away from them. Not at all. Absolutely not. That's what turns them into demonic enterprises where you've set aside other gods other than Allah. They decide, and when they decide, they oppress, they exploit. وَإِن كُنْتُمْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ, but if you are traveling, وَلَمْ تَجِدُوا كَاتِبًا, and you cannot find a scribe, فَرِهَانٌ مَقْبُوضَةٌ, then security deposit should be taken. فَإِنْ أَمِنَ بَعْضُكُمْ بَعْضًا, and if one of you entrusts the other, فَلْيُؤَدِّ الَّذِي اؤْتُمِنَ أَمَانَتَهُ, then the trustee must deliver the trust to its owner. وَلْيَتَّقِ اللَّهَ رَبَّهُ, and he must have taqwa of Allah, his Rabb. وَلَا تَكْتُمُ الشَّهَادَةَ, and do not conceal this testimony. وَمَنْ يَكْتُمْهَا, and whoever conceals it, فَإِنَّهُ آثِمٌ قَلْبُهُ, and so for sure his heart is sinful. وَاللَّهُ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ عَلِيمٌ, and Allah knows whatever you do. The climax of all the ahkam that come in the previous 22 passages that we just read, starting from the middle of Surah Baqarah all the way to now, they come with this last ruku. Again, from the gems, from the treasures underneath the throne of Allah itself. The gifts given to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam at the Mi'raj. Where the entire surah is Madani. These ayat that we see, specifically the last two, these are Meccan ayat in the sense that they were revealed before the migration, but not in Mecca necessarily. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was on the seventh heaven in the Mi'raj when he received these gifts from Allah. The passage begins with Lillahi ma fis samawati wa ma fil ard. To Allah alone belongs whatever is in the heavens and the earth. Wa in tubdu ma fi anfusikum, whether you expose what is within you, aw tukhfuhu, or you keep it secret. Allah knows your intentions even when you don't know them. Yuhasibkum bihillah, Allah will bring you to account for it. Wa yaghfiru liman yasha, then He will pardon anyone He wants. Wa yu'adhibu man yasha, and He will punish whoever He wishes. Wallahu ala kulli shay'in qadir, and Allah has power over everything. Amana ar-rasulu bima unzila ilayhi min rabbihi wal mu'minun, the messenger believed in what has been sent to him by his Rabb, as to the believers. After all of what Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam went through, from the time he proclaimed wa sabaha, when he got on that hill and he proclaimed wa sabaha, announced his prophethood openly, all the persecution that he faced, everything that he went through, from being the most trustworthy, most truthful, to being proclaimed a liar, a kadhab, a huge liar, a fraud, a poet, a majnoon, every possible abuse that the Quraysh could hurl against the character of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they hurled them at him and he was hurt. He was deeply hurt. The Quran testifies to how hurt he was. He saw the Sahaba being tortured for believing in him before his very eyes and unable to do anything for them. He saw the entire clan of Banu Hashim socially boycotted such that their children had to eat leaves to survive, otherwise they would have died. That was the extent to which the Muslims suffered. And then Ta'if happened, where the Habib of Rabbul Alameen is treated like a madman, as if he has lost his mind, where the leaders, the elders of Ta'if, one of them tells him, get out of here, either you're telling the truth or you're lying. If you're telling the truth, then I'm in trouble, I don't want to hear you. If you're lying, then I don't want to talk to a liar. Get out of here. Another one says, did God not find anyone better than you to send as a prophet? You are a prophet? And they don't just stop at that. They ask the little kids on the street who throw stones at mad people. They rile them up and say, chase him out. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the streets of Ta'if is bleeding to the point of his shoes filling up with blood. Nobody by his side. According to some narrations, Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu or Zayd. But how much can they prevent? What can they do? To the point that he falls down, unconscious. And it is at that point that Allah starts opening His gifts. And this is taking place when Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha has passed away, when Abu Talib had passed away. His greatest support, emotionally as well as economically and politically, has been withdrawn. He's literally on his own. The dua that he makes at that point to Allah, where he asks, "Ila man yatajahamuni, who have you entrusted me to? Allahumma ilayka ashku du'fa quwwati. I complain to you, Ya Allah, of the weakness of my strength. Wa hawani ala nas, my absolute subservience before people. I'm just so helpless before them. Ila man takiluni, to whom have you entrusted me? These people so far off, so distant from me. They have been entrusted over my affair to do with me whatever they want to." The response of this dua that we then see, Surah Yousuf, to start off. The most beautiful story of suffering of prophets and what came out of that. The jinnat hear the Quran. The Quran testifies to the jinnat hearing the Quran at that time from that return to Ta'if, from Ta'if. And then the Mi'raj, the Isra and then the Mi'raj that takes place, where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam sees what he sees. And all of that is capped off with these two ayat. And what do these two ayat do? They testify to the iman of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They say that he believed. That's how difficult the certificate of iman is. He comes back from Mi'raj with this certificate from Allah, telling him, you have believed. Amana ar-Rasul, the Prophet believed. Can you imagine? We find belief difficult. We struggle with doubts. There's all of the challenges. But then there's challenges that he had to overcome as well in order to genuinely believe. And then he got that approval. We don't have any of those approvals. We act as if we are believers. We think of ourselves to be believers. Remember the Bani Israel who felt so entitled in this world and in the hereafter. The attitude that the Ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is not supposed to have. We're being told, you want to know how you earn? This is how you get it. Wal mu'minun, as do the Sahaba radiyallahu ta'ala anhum. They're certified as well. Certified believers. Kullun amana billahi. Each of them did believe in Allah, wa malaikatihi, and His angels, wa kutubihi, and His books, wa rusulihi, and His messengers. La nufarriqu bayna ahadim min rusuli. They say we do not distinguish any of His messengers. We do not delete. If you want me to be very literal, from His messengers. We believe in all of them minus one. Is less of a messenger. No, we believe in all of the messengers, the entire institution of prophethood. وَقَالُوا, and they say, سَمِعْنَا وَأَطَعْنَا, we listen and we obey. غُفْرَانَكَ رَبَّنَا, your forgiveness, our Rabb. وَإِلَيْكَ الْمَصِيرُ, and to you is the final destination. لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. No soul is burdened beyond his capacity. لها ما كسبت. For that person is whatever he has earned or she has earned. وعليها ما اكتسبت. And against them is whatever it is that they've done. Everyone for themselves. This is the single most important principle of morality in the Quran. Every person for themselves. رَبَّنَا لَا تُؤَاخِذْنَا. And the believers cry before Allah. This is a dua that Allah is gifting to the believing community, which means its fulfillment is granted as well. Our Rabb, don't take us to task in nasina aw akhtana. If we forget or we make a mistake, رَبَّنَا وَلَا تَحْمِلْ عَلَيْنَا إِسْرًا. Our Rabb, do not make us bear a burden كَمَا حَمَلْتَهُ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِنَا, like that which you laid upon those before us. What an incredible gift Rasulullah comes back from Mi'raj with. Practically saying to the rest of the ummah after that point, you don't have to suffer what me and my Sahaba suffered in the past 10 years. That the way we've suffered, we've paved the way such that your La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah is not as difficult. It's still going to be difficult, but it's not going to be that difficult. رَبَّنَا وَلَا تُحَمِّلْنَا مَا لَا طَاقَةَ لَنَا بِهِ. Our Rabb, do not burden us with that which we have no ability to bear. وَعْفُ عَنَّا. Be flexible with us. Give us latitude. وَاغْفِرْ لَنَا. Forgive us. Cover up our sin. وَارْحَمْنَا. Have mercy upon us. أَنْتَ مَوْلَانَا. You are our guardian, our protector. فَانْصُرْنَا عَلَى الْقَوْمِ الْكَافِرِينَ. So help us against the disbelieving people. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله. Please. Islamic financing. So again, those are technical details of the system that we're stuck in, which inevitably, regardless of how many precautions are taken, is going to be engaging in riba one way or the other. So of course, presently, given our circumstances, individuals, particular groups, will engage in the least riba transactions possible. But there is no such thing as a completely riba-free transaction. That would only take place if we go to the mountains and I give you a sack of dates and I take from you 2 sacks of wheat. That may be a riba, but then where do those dates and wheat come from? There would be so much of riba at every layer. So we do the best we can. We trust the scholars who are entrusted in this work and are doing whatever it is that they can do, and we can disagree with them as well, of course. Not we, by mean me, but people more qualified than me. Nevertheless, as a community, the responsibility remains not to continue to make halal whatever options are already out there, but to work and struggle towards creating genuine alternatives which are riba free. As far as economic transactions are concerned, the Quran gives principles. It does not give details. The details have to be worked out by the believing community. And the believing community, going by the principle of La yukallifullahu nafsan illa wus'aha, that Allah does not burden anyone beyond their capacity. We have the capacity. Or if we don't see ourselves as having the capacity, then we have the capacity to build capacity. At least we should be focusing on that. That's what we're going to be accountable for. To build capacity so that we have those alternatives. That responsibility we cannot evade. As to the particular transactions, of course, there's rulings out there and everyone can do their research and see where they fall. I cannot be the one to comment on that in any way. We can always rent. But what I'm actually more focused upon is capacity of human resource, that a community comes together and says that this group of people from among us is going to specialize in developing an alternative to this back-breaking, human-exploiting system. Let's focus there. So maybe right now we're stuck, and do we go for car financing, home financing, Islamic financing, other financing, all of those confusions, real problems, not taking anything away from that, but at least 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, our children's generation should not have the same problems and the same debates. They should have genuine alternatives. Where is our investment in that domain? As a community, we're all responsible for working on that capacity. Okay, having said that, Jazakumullahu khairan to all of you. It takes a lot to sit through every weekend, 2 hours each. I realize now more than I did at the beginning of the month as to how demanding it is. It is more demanding of you than it is for me. It's easier for me to sit here and not fall asleep. It is more difficult for you to sit on the ground or on chairs and to sit through 2 hours really. So I am very, very grateful to all of you for your participation, for taking the time, the effort, the trust that it takes for going through something like this, looking for benefit therein. Whatever was good was from Allah. Whatever was wrong is my own inadequacy, my own shortcoming that I ask you to forgive me, that I ask Allah to forgive me for. We are indebted to the administration of Masjid Hamzah for allowing us this space and opportunity. And it wasn't just me, of course, there was an entire team, Zagir Bhai, Fahim, all of us were involved in making sure something like this would be possible. Ideally, like I said at the beginning, I would have wanted to go from beginning of Fatiha all the way to Nas, but that wasn't going to happen. But at least this much we were able to do, whatever humble offering it was. And although, of course, the turnout, the number of people who benefited were not as much as we would have wanted it to be, but that does not matter in the long run. Even if there was just 2 of you here, I would have done it because I needed to do this for myself more than anything else. And so, Jazakumullahu khairan, and I hope we're able to continue in different ways, perhaps different program settings, different formats, but continue to engage with the Quran as a community, inshaAllah ta'ala. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Barakallah.
Just maybe 10 questions, more than that. Please look for that and fill it out and share with others as well as a community. Even people didn't show up, they didn't attend, that they will be, their feedback is because some of the questions will help us, inshallah, the team to make, changes and improvements and whatnot. So maybe, inshallah, that we can forward from on. Jazakallah khair, Dr. Yousuf, for your continuous support over here and the community. Jazakallah khair.